Hi, Fiends. Thank you for joining me on
I think
DonnaJean's Coffee House of Horror. And I am here with the cast and the crew of Phobias. I'm going to ask everybody to introduce themselves and let you know their role in the film.
All right, I'll start. I'm Matt Anderson. I am the writer or lead writer of Phobias and co-director with Craig Rosenthal.
And I am Craig Rosenthal, one of the directors, and I didn't write the script, but I helped to develop the story. And I'm also helping to lead the special effects team on this one.
I'm Monique Dupree. Which is always awesome. And yeah, that's it.
Julie?
Okay, I'll go next. I was just waiting. I never know. I don't want to jump in. I always cut people off. So I'm Julianne Prescott. I play Sharon, and I'm super excited for this role because it is definitely something very, very different from what people might expect from me. And I think that this character is also something that is very different from what people might expect from her. So I think it was a great fit and super happy to be part of this with you guys.
I'd say Emily.
Great. Hi, I'm Emily Flack. I'm playing Emmy in Phobias, so the name is going to be pretty easy to respond to on set. My friends also call me Emmy every once in a while, so it's going to be a good fit. This is going to be my first ever movie that I've shot before, so I'm really excited to be part of Phobias and get started on the project.
Michael.
Hey, I'm Michael McGlynn. I play Abner in the movie. Pretty much, I play a very secluded, very quiet, very sheltered kind of guy, you could say, who you almost would argue was afraid of his own shadow. And let's just say, with what he has lined up from Phobias, is going to bring his fear to a whole new level.
Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm playing the role of Barry in Phobias. My understanding, Barry is kind of he's trying to do good and is kind of friendly, but kind of gets stepped on and does what he's told.
And certainly last but not least, Heather.
Hello, thank you. I am Heather Harlow. I'm also very excited to be a part of this project. I am succubus number 3, and I'm super stoked. I got my beginnings with acting in the haunt industry, so getting to be a monster of any sort is always a pleasure, and it'll be my first time on film being a creature, so I'm excited, stoked.
Awesome.
That is badass.
This, especially from what I have heard, with there not being a lot of CGI and the effects are practical, it gives being a monster a whole new meaning because you're actually there with the makeup and doing kind of doing the Tom Woodruff Jr. Pumpkinhead thing. So
it's always one of the things that I love about filmmaking and doing horror actually are the practical effects. And I've said this before, I had to sit in makeup once for 10 hours to become this monster. And it was the greatest 10 hours ever for me. So I love sitting to be made up to become whoever or whatever it is, whatever creature it is that I'm becoming. It's one of the most awesome feelings for me. And I'm very, very patient when it comes to sitting in that chair to get all of the transformation happening.
Do you feel like, Monique, that like when you're doing that, it's also like it helps you get into that headspace because it does become so confining, so you know, like that whole time you're thinking about it? Like,
yes,
do you think
I did say that. I did say that with that role, and that was my first role doing something like that. The longer it took, the angrier I became. Not because I was sitting there getting in makeup, but because I was hungry and watching everyone else eat and I couldn't. So I became a very, very angry creature. And by the time we were done, it was very, very easy for me to snap at everyone. And it was accepted because I was a bad guy. So, but no, it was really one of those things. I feel like you can feel the transformation, and they gave me a mirror the entire time. So it was almost like as they put on each piece and drew each vein, I became more and more that character that I saw in my head. It was just an amazing feeling. I didn't even know you could do that, but it was so great.
Cool. That's super
okay.
fun. Oh, I said a bad word, DonnaJean. I'm sorry.
No. There are so many people here, and I want to hear what everybody has to say. So if there's a little bit of jumping in and overlapping because of that, I think we can all just understand and kind of go with it. But if you did have something else you wanted to say, I didn't want to cut you off.
Oh, me?
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm done. I'm done. Oh. I love you, Julie. I'll just say that.
I love you too. No, I used a bad word is what I was saying, Donna. Like,
oh.
I don't know if, like, we're not supposed to say bad words.
I mean, the big thing is we want to, we'll talk about our bit, but the big thing is we want to celebrate all these wonderful actors that have joined us, because really, with all these really great talents, some new, some established, I think it's going to give us that right kind of mix. And Julie pretty much joined us from the very beginning. She was pretty much the first one cast because she was here filming Matt Burns's KOA, and she read the script that night, and Julie can tell you exactly why, but we definitely want to celebrate them. So why don't you get me and Craig out of the way so that the rest of them can just run with the show.
Oh my God, you guys are leaving? That's so weird.
They're leaving.
Nobody's allowed to leave if you can.
No, I'm not going anywhere, but I have a tendency to hijack conversations. So I'm doing my effort not to do that.
Yeah, Matt and I are kind of funny because he's the extrovert and I'm the introvert. He'll talk nonstop, and I'm the one that just sits there just kind of staring.
Well, it's a good balance.
Why don't we start a bit about the film, in talking about how it came to be. And from what I could gather just from a bit of the messaging with you, Matt, and also with Matt Burns, the Matts. I was talking to the Matts.
The Matts.
We are Matt.
We are Matt. So it was a collaboration really between your thinking and Craig and Matt, and then also Thomas, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how did that kind of formulate from ideas into what we're talking about in terms of the movie?
All right. Well, as we were talking earlier, we have a movie called Development Hell that we were working on, but we just realized it was good, but it wasn't great. And we realized that we kind of had Craig more so than me had wanted to do a really good horror film, but we didn't just want to play it safe. We wanted to really push ourselves. So I'm going to turn it now over to Craig because he pretty much came up with the idea. I just added some words and stuff to it.
Well, so we wanted to do a horror movie, and we wanted to do it kind of our way. I was throwing out ideas, Matt was throwing out ideas, and nothing was really sticking. We wanted to do something that was going to have to do with fears or a therapy session gone wrong. And it was just, we were looking at it and approaching it in the completely wrong way. So we decided, after some discussion, and Matt gave me some of his notes as to some ideas that he would like to interject in there, that it would work best to bring in elements from movies that we both typically grew up with. Him more science fiction and me more of horror and monster movies and such. So over the course of a couple nights, I sat down and I outlined the overall plot, and I handed it over to Matt, and he liked it. He started scripting it. He got the script back to me, and I read through it, and I was just floored by how suddenly this story that just kind of meandered about in my original outline suddenly just came to life. It was just amazing. This, for me, this is the kind of movie that I would have grown up watching as a kid, and I probably would have just rewound it on VHS and watched it over and over and over again. It's got everything in it that that for someone like me that grew up in with those 80s and 70s movies, that has everything in it that I would love to see in a movie.
Right. And, Craig's outline was very helpful. I mean, the original idea that we came up with was terror therapy, and
the
only place that stuck was on the bottom of our shoe.
Yeah.
It was terrible. It was terrible. And then we tried something sort of like a Westworld kind of thing, and it just stunk as well. It smelled like horse plop. And so when we did come up with when we went to Phobias, it just gelled. And one of a movie that Craig and I both love is Prince of Darkness. And we love that. We felt it's a perfect melding of science and horror together. And it's
not to mention Alice Cooper is kind of a zombie.
Right, exactly. But I just love it. And then the whole thing with the transmission from the future and all. I mean, it just so
good.
Yeah, and that definitely kind of really helped us with that. And then we also like movies like Cube and Hellraiser, and
particularly Hellraiser 2.
Right, Hellraiser 2.
Yeah.
So by putting all those together, and then the big thing that we wanted to do is we looked at the typical horror character tropes: the final girl, the bitchy girl, the guy that's there just to die quickly, the jock, the joker, the asshole that you're glad that he dies.
Typically all the cliched characters from a lot of these sorts of movies.
Right. And so we looked at it and we wanted to try to find a way to not necessarily deconstruct them, but to make them a little bit more different. So with Julie's character, Sharon, she's a religious person, but she's not Mrs. Carmody from The Mist. Emmy is a student, but, we wanted her to be a little bit more representative of a person of this period and, of kind of more modern. But also make her not just the hot girl to get killed. Same thing with Abner. Abner, he's still that job, but he still he's a little bit more than that. You get some of his backstory just by his actions. And our lead, Bora, who we are still casting, it's a very tough finding our male lead, Bora. The way that the character would look to most people, he's the big dumb jock guy, that helps the final girl or was dating the final girl or the friend of the final girl, whatever. And he's not that at all. And so that's, we really wanted to make sure that we pull it out. And then when we went with the monsters, which, that's for Craig, that's his area. When we really worked with the monsters, we came up with
a whole list of different fears and phobias. I mean, and there was a bunch of stuff that was in the original outline that we simply either couldn't work into the script or there was just too much. So we really had to narrow down those phobias to make it work for the story.
Right, exactly. And so with the monsters, we went with first we looked at the weirdest possible phobias, and we found some really weird phobias. I mean,
I bet.
I'm sure that was really fun. That must have been like amazing to use that, you know, just like a whole day or two, whatever, just looking at how the human mind is triggered by certain things that you wouldn't even expect.
Oh, it was a lot of fun because before I even put the outline together for the plot, I just spent about 24 hours just reading up on the most bizarre phobias.
And which one you found, either whether you used it or not.
We can't because we did use it.
Oh, you did use it. Okay.
And my lips are sealed. I can't say anything. Yeah.
But I will say that my ex-wife actually came up with that monster as a joke. And we went and we looked it up and we're like, it's a real thing. It's a real phobia. And it's never been done. Ever. Wow. Nothing has ever come anywhere near it. So
it sounds like a very intelligent film because it sounds as though you're not only going into the psyche of the mind and bringing that out into a creature, but you're also doing away with the stereotypes of the tropes and just kind of making them more realistic people.
Well, and a lot of that also comes from for instance, when the movie Cube was first released, initially these characters seemed like they could have been easy, cliched characters, but as the movie progresses, you realize that these people are very fleshed out. They're very realistic people, and their actions change accordingly to how the movie progresses in a very naturalistic way. And I think that was a big part of making sure that these characters also came to life on the screen. It would have been very easy to write these characters as being just simple cliches. And unfortunately for the viewer, when that's the case, you already know what's going to come next. We don't want the viewer to specifically know what is going to happen next.
Right. Like in the case of Becky, playing by Ellen Ud, she is, if you just look at just the surface, she's the mad scientist. But she's not a mad scientist. There is a deliberate purpose and goal in her experiments. And so, again, we didn't want her just to be mad because the script demands that she be mad. We wanted her to be the scientist. And again, we don't want you to necessarily, nobody in here with the exception of the monsters, which is Monique and Heather, or two of them, you know what they're there for. They're there to kill people. But even then, we wanted to kind of look at some of that, and how do you realize that that kind of fear, succubi fear of it's pretty obvious what that phobia is. So nothing in this story, the people's actions aren't just dictated because the story demands that they act this way. Exactly. There is a reason and a psyche, and while you may not get the entire backstory of the person, you do. You get it just from their actions. And there was one movie that I watched called Shadow Puppets with James Marsters and Jolene Blalock. Terrible movie. Boring as hell. But the one shining piece of that film is the fact that every single character she knew, because all the characters had amnesia, but you still understood who the person was by the way they reacted to things. And that is something you don't see a lot. And so even though they didn't know who they were and they had no memories, you could still figure out what kind of person they were just because of that. And that's what we wanted to do with Phobias. And so then we put it out and we got all these wonderful cast members, and, and we got very, very lucky. And then
really exciting to see, because seeing what drove somebody over to the madness is can be a story in and of itself.
Yes. And then, when we made these monsters and we had Jeremy Amos of Amos Effects design the monsters for us, and I'm going to let Craig talk more about that one because that's his forte. You know, once we saw those and we realized what they were, there was no other choice but practical. CG or anything else would just would take away from it.
Well, and to be honest, with or without those sketches, it was never ever going to be CG, and not to badmouth CG in general. I think that there is certainly a time and a place for it, but when it comes to a good old-fashioned monster mash, the effects have to be practical. The actors have got to be able to interact with these characters in order for it to sell. The only CG, and I mentioned this in past interviews, the only CG that's going to be used in this movie is simply to enhance the practical effect. And I'm talking literally, if there are strings attached to some of these creatures, removing the strings with the CG. We really want to showcase these special effects. We really want to showcase what our special effects team can do. Half of the movie is based around these creatures, and that's in my opinion one of the biggest selling points to this film is people hear a monster movie, they're going to want to see monsters, particularly monsters they've never seen before.
Right. And we have 2 special effects teams working on this. Craig, that's your team.
Sorry. No, we have Amos Effects, which is Jeremy Amos and Matthew Amos. And Andrea, who is Matthew Amos's fiance. And then we have Joan Jones. I always want to say Joan Jett.
I was waiting for that one.
Then we have Joan Jones. We have a really good team on this, and I've worked with the Amos brothers many times in the past, and I know what they're capable of, and they have really come a long way in the past 10 years. And judged on based on those sketches that Jeremy had provided, we're going to have some pretty awesome monsters here.
Right, and they're right now, matter of fact, the Amos brothers are working on Roseblood, another Friday the 13th fan film, which they also worked on Voorhees.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So they definitely have got the pedigree. They have the pedigree. So does Joan Jones, and then we have Donnie Drum, who will be working on creature prosthetics. So between the 3 of them in Craig's direction, we're really that. Besides having a unique monster, which, by the way, just going to mention it before we get over to the actors, Emily is the one who gets killed by the unique monster.
Oh no!
Yes. I'm very excited for it. I was at home when I read the script and my parents were asking all about it. I'm like, I can't tell you, but it's going to be really, really awesome. So if you try to see me die on film, this is the way to do it.
And Emily, I'm going to do everything in my power to make it so that you do not see what this creature looks like until we're filming.
Right.
Oh yeah. I want to get your reaction of straight fear.
I don't think it's going to be too hard. I am an easily scared person, so you're going to get some genuine reactions out of me. It's going to be great. I'm excited for it.
Oh, we're very excited for it as well.
I will say that her character is one, since you guys are sharing a little bit more of her character, I can actually respond to that, because your character, Emily, is one that I really it's going to hurt me. Like, I'm going to feel so bad. Like, I really love your character. And I think that not only are you going to do amazing bringing her to life, but it's just hard. Like, I think this is one of the characters that you really feel. You really do feel it.
Yeah, it's definitely one that you were talking about, flipping the stereotypes on the head of what the characters could be in a horror film and what they're going to be in Phobias. So getting that shift of character is going to be something really cool to see, and how like our 2 characters relate to each other and interact is going to be really, really fun and really devastating to work on.
I know.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot.
Yes. Well, since we're kind of moving on there and moving a little bit of the characters, I'm really intrigued to hear about your character, Julie, because from what everybody else said and what bit that you shared with me, it sounds like she is somebody that you can really relate to. And
I didn't share too much, guys, before you get nervous. Like, what was she telling?
Sorry.
No,
we trust you, Julie. We're not worried. We're not worried.
I just shared that she has faith, and I build backstory always in my head with the characters that may or may not even be there. So I feel like a little bit was kind of shared in the script, but fully in my mind, I feel like her faith has saved her and gotten her to places where she had to rely on it, and it got her through some really dark times. She does say at a point, you know, like you guys were saying, she's not just like your typical like perfect person that has faith and every day like doesn't make mistakes. Like she's obviously made some mistakes. So and when I read the script and just when I met DonnaJean, it's so weird that whole weekend everything just kind of like, I don't know, built into this huge, I don't know, meant to be kind of thing. But I feel her because I think that, you know, I can feel where she's coming from, where she's been through some really hard times and she's had to have faith and she's had to like throw herself into different things to get herself in a better space. And that weekend, and just, I don't know, it just felt like very right. And immediately like a bond with her because I was going through that as well. And so I feel like a little piece of me immediately clicked. And then when you guys kind of were like, I think you'd be a good fit as well, it just all started to make a lot of sense. So I think it's going to be very intimate at some points what I'm going to put into this character, because I really do have a sense of kind of who she is already.
And
right.
Of course,
everybody felt that
they are and puts it into the character to one degree or another, you'd think.
Well, and also, you know, casting Julie for this role, I think really changes how I initially looked at this character when she was written, because Julie's going to put her own spin on it, and I think that brings a completely different dynamic and realism to this character. I mean, how many times have we all seen in a horror movie where the religious character is the one that everyone can't wait to get killed off? Too many times, right? I mean. And well, the point is that for me, I'm not a religious person, but it's nice to see a character like this actually getting, you know, a much more realistic presence than, you know, like how Matt had mentioned Miss Carmody from The Mist, where everyone watching the movie was rooting when she finally was shot in the head, you know? This character is going to be completely opposite of that.
I think it leaves the door open for, again, yeah, exactly. It breaks stereotypes. I think it leaves the door open for people to be more open about what does give them strength, and again, it makes a character, again, it not so flat as what you would expect. And I think that when she says things, she has a whole different sort of approach with it, where you're going to actually listen to this character because you can tell she's not just trying to be forceful, and she really believes these things and they're healing for her, and that's her intent. So, but I won't say anymore, but that's kind of where she's coming from. And I thought it was really interesting to see that. So, and I've never had any kind of, I don't know, have I even had any moral characters? I don't even know if I've had moral characters along the way. So this is like, it's amazing to me.
Well, what really sold it, part of what sold it for me with Julie, other than, you know, her talent, is there's a line in there where she, you know, I'm just like, she goes, where Sharon goes, I'm just like everybody else. I drink, I smoke, I curse, you know. And
I just did earlier.
Yeah, so exactly. So, I mean, Julie pretty much is Sharon. But when she read it and she auditioned and we realized, okay, there's that dimension that we're looking for. And that's what we look for everybody when we cast is, do they have that extra dimension that makes us go from seeing the great actor or taken from the great actor to that person. Are they that person? And I can say everybody that's here met that criteria. And that's why we're still having a hard time trying to cast Laura, because we've gotten some really great people to audition, but we're still, it's just so tough. You know, some were easy, some were a lot harder, and some people did amazing jobs and some did fantastic jobs. And how do you delineate? And it comes down to, as I like to say, death by degrees. And so like that. So, you know,
and typically Matt and I are very nitpicky when we have come up with an idea of how the character should be played. We're looking for someone who can really nail it out like that, unless an audition comes in that presents the character in a light that we never would have imagined.
And that's what Julie did. And that's like in Serious Profession, our other movie that we're working on, the original character was written, and then we had two actors come in, both giving us very different takes. And all of a sudden we're like, wait a minute. And so, you know, that's what we're always looking for. And come on, Craig, let's just use the word that it is. We're snobs. Okay?
Yeah.
We're kind of snobby when it comes to our stuff and films in general. We have a show called Terribly Awful. I mean, it's fairly obvious, you know, what we do. But anyways, talk with the rest of these folks. I'm gonna start eating. I'm gonna eat my Reese's Pieces so I don't say anything.
That's great.
Thanks for hanging out with us while I talk to the Key 13 cast and crew of Phobias. And unfortunately, Monique Dupree's phone died. Her battery died on her phone, and that's why she had to leave before we really had any kind of a chance to talk to her. But, you know, I've got my Monique Dupree Candy Woman shirt on now. And hang out with me on the Coffee House, and you will run into her again. But please be sure that you stop back here on Wednesday, because we are going to watch part 2. See you then.